First of all, thank you for joining. Those of you who had joined us earlier, we were just chatting and catching up with Denise. She's been doing some amazing things in Germany. As it seems like Germany is a hub, but she's reaching out to many countries and um, supporting people through transition. And I think this is perhaps one of Denise's greatest qualities that I've noticed in her. There's many. You can tell she's a very good orator, and she's has insights that she can share with you. But tonight we have Denise with us. She's going to be speaking on embracing struggle, leveraging failure. Denise has worked in TV news in the BBC when she was here, as well as the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation when she was based in Canada, for over 4 decades. And I hadn't realized it was 4 decades. Not looking at you now, it doesn't look like it could be 4 decades. But for over 4 decades, Denise has been a teacher, a facilitator. She's a published, well-received author in sci-fi that I've only just discovered. And she has been a meditator with the organization. She's currently based in Munich, Germany. At the end of Denise's talk, all the questions you send us via the question and answer link in your email, we will be putting those to Denise on your behalf. So there will be a chance to ask questions, so don't hesitate to send those questions through. Denise will also do a short meditation based on her talk before she receives your questions. So Denise, over to you. Look forward to hearing what you've got to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arti, and Om Shanti to everyone at Inner Space and all of you who are joining on Zoom and Facebook and in different places. Embracing struggle and leveraging failure. These are probably not necessarily the topics that you want to think about or that you're used to think about, but they're important because we have a word in spiritual practice of Raj Yoga, and that word is tapasya. It's a word from India, tapasya, and it means to strive. Sometimes we interpret that word as meaning practicing intense meditation, and that is definitely part of it, because whatever our circumstance is, very often there are aspects of it which are difficult and which we don't understand. And we will try to position ourselves vis-a-vis our situation, thinking, okay, this is the right position. But I don't know if you've ever had the feeling that you are not really sure whether your angle on reality is the best one or the right one, and yet that's the one you have. And if you want to really shift from your current state with all of its limitations and arrive at an angle on reality, the social reality that we are in, from a different angle, then you are operating a bit blindly, and it is a struggle because you are unsure. When you have very fixed ideas, then they may or may not be right, but because they're so fixed, you just go bludgeoning your way through with that particular angle on reality until things really fall apart and you get a really big sort of shock, or everything collapses and then you have to rethink. We are living in very chaotic times, very disturbed, unclear times where it's just really strange. And I think, just to be topical, the circumstances of the last couple of days where the president of the United States was accused by a large number of people in high places of inciting insurrection against the country. And this is so strange because you see a country which is really divided, and you see a lot of people who are having a very fixed idea about what's real, which actually isn't real. And then you have other people whose idea about reality, I think, is more connected with what is real. And then these two communities are huge and they are at loggerheads with each other. And we see this in many different areas. So I think the struggle that I want to talk about today that we need to embrace is really the struggle to figure out for the self what is the angle on reality that I need to adopt, which is real, which is right, and which may be different from the angle that I grew up with and that I figured out in my own thinking. Perhaps my personal ethical policy that I have worked out through my whole life is not exactly quite right. Um, Perhaps my perception of people is biased, and the circumstances that we're in are demanding that we rethink all of this. Now, for me, I feel that I'm at a great advantage because I've had the opportunity to study matters of spirituality and to practice meditation and so on for 45 years. So I have access to a lot of different views about what reality is. And then you take all of these, and with that, you formulate your personal angle. But circumstances are such that they tend to challenge your assessment, and eventually you have to let go of how you thought everything is. And then you're really in struggle because you have to really think, okay, what is my identity? Identity is a big issue. I think most people think about their identity in terms of their nationality, but we live in a very pluralistic society and you have divided loyalties. You may be living in Europe, but your roots are in Africa or Australia or America or the Middle East or India or China. And so you carry with yourself your roots, and then you try and put roots in another place which maybe doesn't understand you, doesn't like you. And so you have to adopt a way that allows you to fit in and integrate, but yet you find yourself in the struggle that on the one hand, you want to be part of where you are, and on the other hand, you don't want to deny what you are in terms of how your being is constructed on the basis of your traditions, your background, your culture, your very, very subtle attributes of your identity that make you think of yourself as fundamentally a good person. And if you have to go against that in order to advance in a new society or a new community or a new environment, this puts you in an ethical dilemma, which is very uncomfortable. And so there is this struggle to figure out what is the right way to make a balance and integrate all the different elements of your struggle so that you actually arrive at a solution um, where everything is what you can say is in order. One of the words that we use when we're in struggle is should, ought, ought not, has to, must, these modal verbs. So you find yourself in a situation and you make assumptions about that situation. Maybe you come into a world where there are many uh, words used that correspond to that word. Like if you go into a spiritual community, there are words about spirituality like love and peace and cooperation and harmony and all of that. So you say in good faith, okay, I will I will adopt these values. They correspond to who I am. And I will assume that the people who are talking about these values are also embodying them. And then you carry on and you find that what people say and what they do is not the same. And it is a big question when you hear this expression, walk your talk. Because everyone has some degree of double standards. To some degree, it is understandable or acceptable, but there's some kind of invisible line, which when it gets crossed, then it creates a lot of disturbance in someone who is observing that. So you're in an environment where everyone talks about love and peace and harmony and integrity. And your interpretation of those words is yours. And the people that you're interacting with, they're using the same words, but they define them and interpret them differently. And so you find yourself in a position of struggle. And you experience that they do not respect who you are, they do not understand you, they do not appreciate your contribution, and they are basically in a competition where, as far as possible, they would like to gain the upper hand, and you are out of the running as far as possible, because the world we live in is highly competitive. Even then, people say, no, we should be cooperative and nice to each other and all of that. But the double standards come in and you find yourself in a struggle. If you are at the losing end of the game, you are very unhappy about this. And this is where the question of the second part of our discussion today comes in, leveraging failure. Because when you approach your situation in good faith and you assume that the others around you are also acting in good faith and that you don't question these assumptions, and then all of a sudden things go very differently from how you expect, and then you find yourself in loss, rejected, um, maybe character assassination is going on, you are being described as not okay as a person, and you feel that this is injustice, it is unfair, it is illegitimate authority put against you, and you are in a position where you feel you failed. Everything went against you. You lost. And when you look at this from the angle of spirituality, you get something quite interesting, which I would like to put before you, because I have used this. I think there's no single person who experiences success at every step and never any kind of failure. I don't think there's anybody like that. But some people experience more failure, or they're more sensitive to their failure. And so leveraging that failure and turning that failure to your advantage is something that is possible, definitely very desirable. And there are also some methods and techniques and approaches that are very helpful for this. So, in a spiritual practice, we talk about the idea of being a spiritual warrior. We talk about the war against negativity and this sort of idea, which is quite classic, the war between the dark forces and the light forces. And there's always this idea that no matter how big the struggle is, it's always the forces of light, the forces of goodness, which will win. And then all of a sudden you find yourself, I'm the good person, but the bad people are winning and I'm losing. So how do I work with this? How do I use this to my advantage? I think it's safe to say that every single person has some degree of ego. And ego is something we talk about a lot in spirituality. And the idea is to become free from ego, but the difficulty is to define what exactly this ego is. Now, sometimes we talk about it as false ego. And so we mean that there is a true sense of identity where you're in your personal spiritual power, you are feeling completely in your self-respect, and you are fine. I think the practice that I'm particularly interested in the moment is, what does it take to be absolutely real, absolutely in your power, but with no protection at all? So this ego is a form of protection that you bring up whenever you are challenged or attacked in social situations, business situations, whatever. So when we find ourselves in a situation of struggle, and that there is a competition going on where we think there shouldn't be, that some injustice is going on which we think is not right, and so on, and we are attacked by it, you feel attacked, so you will definitely bring up your ego mask. And that could be an attitude of righteous indignation. It could be an attitude of, those people are doing something unlawful, they ought to be punished for it, and somebody should do something about it, and somebody should stop it. But in spirituality, we say, okay, all of that may well be true, but it's not practical, because what we want to be done is not going to get done. And so we will say, okay, this is a test for me. And what I need to do is figure out, and this is where embracing struggle is involved. It is a struggle to really deeply figure out, what is it about me that has got this whole thing wrong? And what do I need to do to shift, to reset myself, so that I understand clearly what the deal is, and that I adopt an angle of approach which is appropriate, effective, and suitable, and give up my other old way, because the old way is ineffective, it's not right, it's nothing to do with the situation, and it's not who I am. But there is a struggle involved in doing that, because you feel as though you're in completely alien territory. You're blind, you don't know your way around, and so you have to wing it. And usually, when you wing things, it doesn't go very well. So there is a struggle, it's an internal struggle to sit with yourself and really figure out. Nobody will tell you, nobody will help you, to sit there and figure out what is going on here. What is the lesson for me? What is it that I am blind about? What is it that I'm not seeing? And the thing that will be the most helpful of all to actually to actually get us through this struggle is failure. And so we think in spiritual practice, we think of failure as something really positive. But most people, they have fear of failure. And when they do experience failure, they really feel bad and they want to avoid and blame and all of that. But very few people think of failure in such a positive way that they can actually sit with it and learn from it and turn that failure into the very thing that carries you from your condition where you are really not doing things right to a place where you're awake, you're aware, you got it, you understood the message, you do not have resentment at all, you embrace the failure and you use the failure to your advantage. And this requires a lot of inner strength. So it's a bit of a paradox, because the reason you fail is because you don't have the inner strength. And yet, if you are willing to go through it and accept it and endure the pain that goes with it, the shame, the embarrassment, the exposure, then you can transcend the problem and shift yourself to a personal evolution, a spiritual transcendence, you can almost say. And once you see it, well, you're not blind anymore. And the you that you used to be doesn't exist anymore, because you become someone else by seeing clearly. And this can happen quite rapidly. Of course, this kind of test will have to happen again and again to make sure that you're in your new position, your new sense of self, with your new angle on reality, and you do not buy into the propaganda. I'm calling it propaganda with a reason. The propaganda that people who talk about words like integrity and purity and honor and nobility and so on um, will not necessarily live that way. And very often, even these words will be used as a smokescreen while somebody is doing something for their own personal advantage and trying to get you to be naive, which is not a virtue. So you naively buy into this propaganda, and then you get caught out and you get taken down. And you say, what happened? You know, how is this possible? all these people who I thought were good are really bad, and what's going on? But it's all about growing up. And sometimes people grow up at the right age, but a lot of people grow up really late. But anyway, better late than never. And we have to understand that trusting someone should not be done just like that. Trust is built over a long period of time, and you have to test people. You have to look at what they're doing and see if it is consistent, if it is coherent, and you need to understand the signs. That when somebody is conning you, when somebody is trying to pull the wool over your eyes, and get you to fall into their trap, so that they come out on top and you lose out. This is, in a way, the law of the jungle. Maybe we think, oh, we should be really civilized and there shouldn't be any law of the jungle. But the thing is this, that if you want to be a person of integrity, nobility, and all of these things, you must expect that others will not be like that. And if you assume that everybody is the way you feel that you are, you may be under an illusion about yourself because you don't have what it takes to maintain that under attack. And you may be very deluded about other people's motivations. And so for this, you need a very good life experience. Life experience is second to none, good things, bad things, success, failure, all of that. It says in the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, that we need to be in a state of equilibrium in regard to success and failure, and being honored and dishonored, and recognized and not recognized, and things going well and things going badly. We have to practice equilibrium. And if we don't get any tests, how are we going to practice equilibrium? How are we going to prove that we have something if we haven't gone through test after test after test? And so all of these tests are there to oblige us to step up and to be real, to understand the details of the reality of the world. And we cannot be conspiracy theorists. That is also totally unreal. We cannot be idealists. That is completely impractical. We have to be realist. We have to be strong. We have to be noble and have our own personal ethical policy. And above all, we need to have the personal inner power to be able to manage when people get the better of us, and to immediately let go of any kind of negative feelings and get on with understanding what is the lesson here, what do I need to do so that I am refining my game, as it were. This is a game. It is a very intense competition, and we need to be competent. And all of our failures are designed to refine our way of handling all the things that are happening to us. And if we don't use our failures to our advantage, then we haven't understood the purpose of failure. So in spirituality, we look at things pretty differently from the way reality is usually presented to kids in school or in different religions or whatever. We have to be steely real. And the purpose of life is to become a competent, quality human being with resilience, with a willingness to build capacity at every step, It's all about relationships. And we cannot have an ideal relationship with everyone on earth, but we need to understand ourselves. We need to understand the people that we interact with, and we need to become competent in working out how to relate with people who do not have our best interests in mind, so that you do take care of yourself, but you are able to maintain cordial relationships, and that you really become the master of the scenes. We look at things as different scenes, like in a movie, all these different scenes, and you have to play the scene, whatever it is, but play it well. And there may be tension, there may be danger, there may be all sorts of things, but you have to play the scene well. And if you fail, you go back, relook at the scene in your mind, play it back, and practice. Okay, what did I do that was naive? What did I do that was incompetent? And learn from it to raise your level of capacity. And then you can be really genuine, real, and not under any illusions, not a deluded type of person. And I think ultimately you can be in this stage where you are really strong and unprotected. Unprotected is good because that means you're not going to operate behind any ego mask. You can be yourself totally and completely, absolutely open, vulnerable, but at the same time invulnerable, because you are so strong, because you have taken advantage of all these lessons of life. So I will stop there and let us have a few moments of meditation to think about these things. Think of yourself as a pure, peaceful, loving, powerful, and blissful being of light. This is your identity. Many people will try to pull you away from that sense of self, but practice. This is what I am. This is who I am. And from this place, I come into action through my body in the different scenes. And I'm okay with whatever it is. I am connected with the divine source. I take time to take power into myself. I look after my being. And I go into action, circumstances fearlessly, and look at everything like a divine comedy. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Denise. Moment. So back to the questions. Denise, I have been working a lot on myself at this point. And at this point, I can finally stay in the now. But for other reasons, I finally concluded that all my issues come from the fact that I do not love myself. And here is where I struggle. And it's so frustrating, especially during one of the many types of meditation. And I can't manage to find the love for myself anywhere in my body. How can I love myself?
Well, let's use a different word. Honor who you are. This is, I find, a better word, because loving yourself, you're thinking you have to have some sort of an emotion which is directed towards yourself and make you feel good. And that's not really what love's about. But people think of it like that. But if you use the word honor yourself, who are you? What do you stand for? What are you? And honor that. That is a very real aspect of love, which is not to do with assessing whether you love yourself or not on the basis of some feeling that you may have towards yourself. It's more like an angle of vision towards yourself. Do you honor that you are a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light? Do you honor the fact that you are important in the eyes of God? Do you honor the fact that you are a person of integrity and that you do your best no matter what, and it doesn't always work out, and that doesn't mean that you're a failure? It's life is like that. Do you operate on the basis of enlightened self-interest? This is a big one. Do you do what you do because there is benefit for you, but not at the expense of anyone else? This idea of enlightened self-interest is a really very, very good one. And if you start to think about yourself in these sorts of ways, you will realize that, yeah, you do love yourself, but loving yourself is not about raising some kind of pink cloud and floating around in that's not love, you know.
So, what do you mean by honor yourself? What does that mean? How does that look?
Um, the opposite of honor is dishonor. Do you do things which are against your conscience? Do you do things which put you in loss just because of pleasing somebody else? Do you make choices which you think other people will approve, but which you don't really want? Things like this.
Hmm. Okay. Now, there's a number of questions in chat, so I'm going to run through those. How can you learn from a repetitive mistake you are making when you can't see the root of it in yourself? It's a blind spot to you, and you are not able to ask others. You're in the same mindset that you made the mistake. So, how can you get to a level so you can see and learn from it?
Well, I would say go to the University of Life and you will get some punch on the nose, which will wake you up and let you know. And it's not that you're not able to ask others, it's that you're not willing to ask others because you don't want to hear the truth. And so you need to change that and tell yourself, okay, I am willing to hear the truth at any cost because I'm fed up with this repetitive situation. Once there's an expression, when it's more painful to stay doing what you're doing than to face doing what you're doing, that's when you're ready.
Okay. All right.
So maybe it's bad enough that you can open up and say, okay, now what's my problem? And you'll get 1,000 answers.
Okay. All right. Next question. Why is it difficult to forgive others' mistakes? Why is it more difficult? No. Why is it difficult to forgive others' mistakes but not our own?
Because you've been reading the propaganda. Actually, I think you don't forgive other people's mistakes, but you believe that it's good to forgive them. But excuse me, I think mostly you let it be because you think it's good, and then you have been listening to all this propaganda that you have to be perfect and this and that and the other. I mean, there's so much of that going on, and it's really brainwashed people. So you need to kind of wash your brain from that brainwashing and be really real. Usually, forgiving people, I don't agree with the concept of forgiveness anyway, because I subscribe to the idea of karma. And so instead of forgiving, I say, okay, let go. If somebody did something against me that wasn't good, you either deal with it or you let it go. And if you deal with it, you confront them, you work it out. That's a much better thing. And then you arrive at a conclusion. It's a negotiation skill that's involved. And with your own self, the messages that we receive are all about you have to be extreme, perfect, this, that, otherwise you're a no good, desperate, horrible sinner, and you better go to hell as quickly as possible. What is this? You've been reading the wrong newspapers.
Okay, thank you. Um, do you think people built themselves shields and then don't allow them to feel?
Well, of course, this is the ego mask that people have got. This is the carapace. This is because you're sensitive, and also because you haven't had the necessary, I think, education that allows you to become strong without protection. This is my interest in the moment, is make yourself strong with no protection, and try, even if you get sort of taken out a million times, but you'll get strong without protection. It's a very good space to be, but it's very difficult because you have to be really strong. But how do you get strong is the key question. And for that, you need to take power from the supreme being, from the divine intelligence. And that means meditation. That's why we meditate, to take power so that you can function as a card-carrying human being in a world where there's a lot of difficulties around, a lot of challenges.
Hmm. Okay, next question. Is it right to fight in court for your rights to inheritance? Or should you let it go even when you know that it would help you a lot?
Well, of course, it's right to fight in court for your inheritance. You have rights. You need to understand that you have rights and you should claim them. And the other people will make you feel bad about it because it's easy for them to get you to not stand up for yourself, and then they can just take it away from you. But don't allow that. Why? That's your right.
Hmm. What was the difficult situation you faced, and what was the wisdom you used to overcome it?
Oh, I think that there are thousands of difficult situations, but my problem is whenever I get past them, I forget them. So I don't know. But the wisdom that I am, playing with at the moment is this idea of being without protection, strong without protection. Because all of these, ego masks and so on that you put on are all about preventing yourself from getting wounded or injured or attacked or whatever that you don't like. But if you are strong, then all of these things that come to you, you have the power to deflect them and handle them as they come. And you don't need to stand behind big concrete walls to avoid them. And one difficulty after another, after another, after another is what is needed to actually bring yourself out behind, from behind those protective places and stand up and face and stand up and fight.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do you have any tips on not allowing failure to sink people into depression, particularly children?
I think with children, you have to really be there for them and frequently and a good amount of time so that they feel comfortable to tell you what they're feeling. And then you can share your how you handle that sort of thing and give them a bit of boost and confidence. And you know, children really need to feel that there's somebody that they can talk to and who can give them advice, and not just all the time sort of reject them and tell them, oh, you should be strong, or you should be this, or you should be that, because children are very sensitive and the world is extremely cruel. And so they need to learn how to be strong. And elders who are really with them can show them how to be strong if you are strong. But if you have weak adults around you, then you're going to get depressed. That's the trouble.
Hmm. Okay, all right. Wow. Next question. I regret my whole life, my values. I've avoided closeness with people and have missed so much in life. How do I reverse that?
Well, if you say to the universe this statement, which you just did, you just put it right out there, and be open, and you will find people or some special person who will come into your life, and open yourself to that. It's never too late. And just be willing to learn all the things that you would have learned along the way from very young age, and you can learn it at a later age. It's not going to be painless by any means. It will be very painful, but go through the pain and do it anyway, and you will feel good, your heart will open, and you will say yes.
Okay. Okay. The next question. I have recently challenged a friend for something they said to me. I talked with my friend about what they had said and they apologized. Then, in a text message, they said they cared for me and had not said this before, as they wondered if this would affect our relationship. I now feel uncomfortable with the situation. I'm feeling I want to end the relationship. Dot dot dot.
No, 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 not at all. This is your fear of intimacy coming up. So somebody says to you they really care for you, then you need to say back, thank you so much. I really am happy to hear this, and I really care for you, and keep going. You know, don't end the relationship just because it suddenly became real and you initiated it. And that means you've got to continue, because once you open up that road, keep walking along it, and you know, allow yourself to do what you need to do in a relationship, which is you have to speak about things, you have to be willing to cry, to get angry, to work through stuff. All of that is very, very healthy.
Thank you. How do you handle a relationship that seems distant emotionally and yet offers practical support?
Well, I think again, you need to open up your heart and be present emotionally for the other person, because it seems like you're just wanting the other person to do all the emotional part, and you don't want to, because you don't want to um, be hurt, you don't want to get wounded. And in a relationship, you have to be willing to take risks. It's all about risks.
Mm.
anyway.
Mm,
Otherwise, you'll just regret, and you'll die, and on your tombstone it'll say this one didn't actually live. Try again next time. If you believe in reincarnation, but otherwise, oops,
mm,
it
mm.
may.
Okay, final question. What is the divine? Is it within us, or is divine what people in faith talk about?
Ask yourself this question. Do you believe in God? And what does that mean to you? Um, because there'll be somewhere inside you some sort of a knowing, but you have to go there and ask yourself, what do you really think? And you can find different approaches to the divine in different books. Different religions have different ideas, and you have to decide what you think. And I think also speak to that which you think is the divine. Enter into a conversation, because you need to know, you have a right to know, who is that? What is that? Where is that? The ancient age-old questions. But unless you ask the questions, unless you really sit with yourself about this, you really don't know. What do you think about life? What do you think about death? Who are you? Who is that? What is existence? Metaphysical questions, deep, but very important. And this is what we are all about in the spiritual practice of Raj Yoga that we do, myself, Arti Ben, and those around us.
Okay, I did say that was the last, but there's one more come in, so I'm going to ask you it. How how do we stand fast on the onslaught of SJWs? I don't know what that is, but let me finish. Who want to relentlessly prove their own virtue while bullying others, and who look at things objectively. It's seeping into media, institutions, as you say, propaganda. For example, the fourth wave of women's feminism, much of which wants us to divide men and women and portray all men as patriarchal. These are people playing out the trauma, as you say, but many people are now terrified of speaking against it.
It would be nice to know, what is SJW? Can you ask them to spell it out?
And let's see if they do. Um,
But, take the expression that you raised, patriarchal, all men are patriarchal, but there's tons of patriarchal women as well. And the society that we live in, when somebody gets born, they ask, what is it? They never ask, who is it? Is it a boy or a girl? So
okay,
start
somebody's explaining SJW, social justice warrior. Thank
social
you.
warrior. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, this is again an angle on reality, but then I think if you don't agree with it, and not everybody's going to agree with it by any means, you have to be able to articulate what your position is and represent yourself. And you don't have to engage. This is just the latest flavor of the month, you can say. As Andy Warhol said, you get your 15 minutes of fame and then you become obsolete, and then something else comes up. I think it's about every 30 years it changes. But going back to the patriarchal men and the fourth wave feminists, in spirituality, we say, I am a being of light. And I have a body which could be male or female, but I am not my body. And to actually get into the identity of the self, independent of your gender, your nationality, your race, your culture, your language, your religion, and just be purely a human being, a spiritual being in a human body in the material world, engaging in a very challenging world, and then connect yourself with the supreme source, the divine source, and take power, because you need power to deal with all these things, and also study to really understand what you are, what you stand for, who you are as a spiritual being. And then I think you'll be able to finally be in your power and represent yourself and not take on other people's baggage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are you okay for another one?
All right.
Okay, I feel guilty about two relationships I was in I was in years ago. It has been so long, but they continue to nag me. One is with a brother I don't have contact with anymore. I was abusive to him as a child. The other is a friend with whom I was unable to be honest about my perceptions of her, so I sabotaged the relationship. Should I keep trying to let them go or do something to make amends?
Well, it really depends on the circumstances. I think if you know the people and they're still alive and they're in your contact, then it's very good to sit down with them and just say what's on your mind. Um, because definitely there's something on your conscience, and it's good to unburden yourself, but also make yourself strong so that whatever their reaction is to it, you're able to manage it, you know. But I think if some unfinished business is there, you should definitely try to take care of it. And I would not go for this word guilt. You know, I'm dead against guilt, guilty feelings. You know, you're either guilty or you're innocent. It doesn't require feelings. But to me, you know, when you get a feeling of guilt, you should only really hold on to it for about 1 second. 2 seconds is too long, because a feeling of guilt is a message from your conscience that said, don't do that. And if you did it, don't do it again. But just going guilty, 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 that actually drains all of your spiritual energy. So it weakens you. It doesn't really do anything else. But if you have something on your conscience and you would like to make amends or take care of it, open up the subject, then you definitely should, because it's not going to go away. And handle the unfinished business is good. Do it with courage, with patience, and fortitude.
Lovely, lovely, lovely way of ending. Thank you. Denise, there have been so many people who have said thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights. And from our side at Inner Space, we'd like to say thank you for making the time. I know you rushed back to be with us, so thank you very, very much for making that time. And we hope to have you again in the near future, for sure.
Thank you so much.